Welcome, everybody. We're diving deep today into a topic that I got to say it's been on my mind, colon cancer.
Yeah.
We're going to be looking at a YouTube video. It's by Dr. Carlos Jaramillo.
Okay.
He's a doctor, and he's super passionate about preventative health.
I like it.
And I'll be honest, after doing some research on this, I'm starting to get a little more passionate about it myself.
It's definitely something we should all, be thinking about more.
Right.
And I think that's exactly what Dr. Jaramillo is trying to do, like get people talking about it and taking action like before they have a problem.
Exactly. So our mission today is to understand why colon cancer is becoming so prevalent. We're going to learn to recognize those early warning signs.
Yeah.
And hopefully walk away feeling empowered to take control of our health.
Love it.
And, Dr. Jaramillo doesn't sugarcoat things. He starts right off with a statistic that just kind of blew my mind.
Okay.
In 2020, almost 2 million people worldwide
Wow.
were diagnosed with colon cancer.
That's a huge number. And it challenges this common misconception that cancer is primarily a genetic lottery.
Right.
Dr. Jaramillo really emphasizes that genetics only account for a very, very small percentage of cases, somewhere between like 5 and 10%.
Wow.
So the real culprit, the things that we do every day, our lifestyle choices,
Yeah.
these have a much bigger impact than most people realize.
That's what I found so eye-opening about, digging into this.
Yeah.
It's not just about bad luck. It's about understanding the choices that we're making.
Right.
And how they can either protect or harm our health.
Absolutely.
And speaking of choices, Dr. Jaramillo uses this analogy that really just stuck with me. He compares the colon to a pipe.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
It's a powerful image, isn't it? And he talks about how, if you're pouring, hot oil and harsh chemicals down your sink drain,
right.
eventually it's going to corrode.
Right.
Well, he argues that a similar thing can happen to our colon thanks to, poor diet, chronic inflammation, imbalanced gut microbiome, all this stuff.
Okay, see, that's where I need a little bit more explanation because I get the pipe analogy. But how does that connect to what we're eating and,
Yeah.
the bacteria in our gut and all that?
Well, think about it this way. If you're constantly bombarding your colon with processed foods, sugar, and all these unhealthy fats, it's kind of like pouring grease down the drain.
Oh.
And over time, that leads to inflammation, just like a clogged pipe.
Ah, I see. Okay. So just like a plumber would tell you to use a drain cleaner to break down the gunk.
Yeah.
We need to focus on cleaning up our diet.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And a big part of that is fostering a healthy gut microbiome.
Okay.
Dr. Jaramillo explains that the gut is home to trillions of bacteria.
Right.
Good and bad. And when the balance tips in favor of the bad bacteria, it can actually contribute to inflammation and create an environment where those abnormal cells can start to develop.
So where are we seeing this playing out in the real world?
Well, take a look at where colon cancer is most prevalent. It's countries with highly processed food diets. So the US, Canada, Europe, Australia, It's a wake-up call to examine our own dietary habits, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. It's so easy to get caught up in the convenience of fast food and, packaged snacks. But this really makes you stop and think about
Yeah.
the long-term consequences.
It's not just what we eat, though.
Right.
Dr. Jaramillo also highlights other risk factors.
Oh.
So obesity, smoking, alcohol consumption, and of course, family history of colon cancer.
Right. So a combination of factors.
Yeah.
But before we get too deep into prevention, I think it's important to take a step back and really understand, why is the colon so crucial in the first place? I'll admit, I used to think it was just a waste disposal system.
Oh, it's so much more than that.
Right.
The colon plays a vital role in final nutrient absorption, immune function, and even has anti-inflammatory functions thanks to that gut microbiota we were just talking about.
So a healthy colon contributes to overall well-being.
Totally.
Beyond just
Yeah.
processing food. It's a whole ecosystem in there.
It is, exactly. And Dr. Jaramillo explains that the colon actually has this ingenious triple barrier of protection.
Triple barrier. Tell me more.
Well, first you have the mucus layer,
Okay.
which acts as a protective coating, preventing harmful substances from directly contacting the colon wall. Then you have the intestinal junctions.
Okay.
And these are tiny gates that regulate what passes through from the gut into the bloodstream.
Gotcha.
And finally, you have the immune system, which stands guard, ready to attack any invaders that manage to get through.
Wow. So it's like a fortress.
It is.
But what happens when this fortress is under attack?
That's when we start to see those warning signs that Dr. Jaramillo says are so important to recognize.
Right.
He points out that colon cancer can be really sneaky. It often develops without noticeable symptoms in the beginning.
That's scary. So how do we know if something is wrong?
That's where those 6 key warning signs come in. He really emphasizes that these are things we should never ignore.
Okay. Hit me with them, I'm all ears.
All right. The first one is abnormal bowel changes. We're talking sudden bouts of diarrhea or constipation, especially if you're kind of flipping back and forth between the two. Then there's blood in the stool,
Okay.
which he emphasizes is never normal, whether it's bright red or darker and digested.
Okay, that definitely sounds like a red flag. What else should we be on the lookout for?
He also mentions unexplained anemia. So if your red blood cell count is low and there's no obvious reason for it,
Yeah.
could be a sign of internal bleeding in the colon.
So it's not just about what's happened in the bathroom. It can show up in our blood work, too.
Exactly.
What about pain? Is that a common symptom?
Absolutely. Persistent abdominal pain, especially if you can feel a lump or mass in your abdomen, that warrants immediate medical attention. And then there's unexplained weight loss. It's easy to think, oh, great, I'm losing weight without trying.
Right.
But in this context, it's a serious red flag.
Right. Not the kind of weight loss we want to be celebrating.
Exactly.
Anything else we should be aware of?
The final warning sign he mentions is frequent vomiting.
Oh, okay.
Now, it's not always a sign of something serious,
Right.
but when it's persistent, it's definitely something to discuss with your doctor.
This is a lot to take in, but I'm already feeling more informed. So what happens if we notice one or more of these signs? What's the next step?
The first step is always talk to your doctor, right? They can assess your individual situation and recommend the appropriate tests.
That makes sense. But let's kind of shift gears a little bit and talk about what we can do proactively to protect ourselves.
Yeah.
We touched on lifestyle choices earlier, but I'm curious to dive deeper into Dr. Jaramillo's recommendations for prevention.
Well, he really hammers home the point that early detection is our most powerful tool. He even mentions this book. It's called The First Cell. It's by Dr. Azra Raza. And apparently it delves into this idea across various cancers. I've added it to my reading list.
I'll have to check that out too. But besides staying vigilant and getting regular checkups, what can we be doing on a daily basis to kind of minimize our risk?
Well, let's go back to that pipe analogy. Remember we talked about how processed foods are pouring grease down the drain?
Right. It leads to inflammation and creates a breeding ground for those abnormal cells.
Exactly. So step 1 is cut back on the processed foods. Embrace a diet rich in fruits, vegetables, whole grains.
So basically eating like our grandmothers told us to.
Pretty much.
More fiber, more nutrients, and a happy gut.
Yeah. He actually specifically mentions cruciferous vegetables like broccoli, cauliflower, kale, Brussels sprouts.
Gotcha.
They contain compounds that may have anti-cancer properties.
Okay. Cruciferous veggies, check. What else does he recommend?
He's also a big proponent of getting regular physical activity. Studies have shown a clear link between exercise and a lower risk of colon cancer.
I can see how that would help keep things moving, so to speak.
Yeah. And then, of course, there's those other lifestyle factors that we talked about, like maintaining a healthy weight, limiting alcohol consumption, avoiding smoking.
Right. All those good habits that benefit our health in so many ways. It sounds like he's advocating for a holistic approach, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's not about one magic bullet. It's about making sustainable lifestyle changes.
Exactly. And he emphasizes that this isn't about being perfect. It's about progress. Every small step we take in the right direction makes a difference.
I love that. It takes the pressure off. It makes it feel more achievable.
For sure. And speaking of achievable steps, let's talk about screenings.
Okay.
We mentioned earlier colonoscopies being the gold standard for diagnosis.
Right.
But when should people start getting those?
That's a great question. I know the recommendations have changed in recent years.
They have. The current guideline is to start regular screenings at age 45.
Okay.
However, if you have a family history of colon cancer or other risk factors, your doctor might recommend starting earlier.
So it's really about having that conversation with your doctor and getting personalized advice.
Absolutely. But what about those of us who are younger than 45? Are we off the hook till then?
That's what I was wondering. Are there things we can be doing now to protect our colon health later on?
Totally. Everything we've discussed so far applies regardless of age. Establishing healthy habits now lays the foundation for a healthy colon throughout life.
That makes sense. It's like investing in our future health.
Precisely. It's never too early to start prioritizing our well-being. But here's a question for you. What's one thing you're going to do differently after learning all this?
Honestly, I think I'm going to pay more attention to my fiber intake.
Okay.
I think I can easily incorporate more fruits, vegetables, and whole grains into my diet. What about you?
I've been putting off scheduling a checkup, so that's at the top of my list. It's time to practice what we preach.
I love that. It's so easy to get caught up in our busy lives and neglect those important appointments. But this is a good reminder to prioritize our health.
It is. It's all about taking ownership of our well-being and making those proactive choices.
Speaking of ownership, Adele, Dr. Jaramillo says something in his video that really resonated with me. He says, when you and I become owners of our health changes forever. What do you think he means by that?
Yeah, I think he's talking about that shift from feeling like we're at the mercy of our genes or our circumstances to realizing we actually have more control than we think.
Yeah, it's about recognizing that our daily choices, like what we eat, how we move, how we manage stress, it all contributes to our long-term health.
Right. It's not about being perfect. It's about making those conscious decisions that support our well-being. But let's be honest, it's not always easy.
It's not, no.
Life gets in the way, we get busy, we get stressed,
Yeah,
and sometimes those healthy habits kind of fall by the wayside.
absolutely. It's about progress, not perfection.
Right. And it's about seeking support when we need it. So if you're struggling to make changes, don't hesitate to reach out to your doctor or a registered dietitian. They can provide guidance and help you create a plan that works for you.
And I think it's important to remember that we don't have to do this alone.
No, you don't.
Like surrounding ourselves with people who support our health goals can make a huge difference.
Huge. Yeah.
Sharing healthy recipes, working out together, holding each other accountable.
Oh, totally.
It all adds up.
Well, I feel like we've covered a lot of ground today. We've explored the reasons behind the rising rates of colon cancer, debunked some common myths. We learned about the crucial role that our lifestyle choices play in prevention.
Yeah, and we highlighted the importance of early detection.
Yeah.
Through screenings, and emphasized that knowledge is really our most powerful tool when it comes to protecting our health.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one takeaway you want our listeners to walk away with?
For me, it's just that sense of empowerment.
We have agency over our health. We can make choices every single day that support our colon health and our overall well-being.
Yeah. It's not about living in fear. It's about living informed and empowered.
Exactly. And remember, even small changes can have a ripple effect over time. So start with one thing, build from there, and celebrate each step forward.
Beautifully said. And on that note, we encourage all of you listening to reflect on your own habits and discuss any concerns with your healthcare provider.
Yeah. Your health is your most valuable asset.
It is.
Invest in it wisely.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into colon cancer.
Yeah, thanks, everybody.
We hope you found it informative and empowering.
We'll see you next time.
Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay well.